The first time Elena looked at herself in the full-length mirror of her dorm, she didn't recognize the girl staring back. She was no longer the slender, radiant pre-med student who walked through the halls of the University of Washington with ambition in her stride and hope in her heart. She was 21, tall, still beautiful, but now encased in over 430 pounds of weight she didn't ask for. Her once athletic frame had been overtaken by the cruel and silent progression of a rare endocrine disorder that no one around her fully understood, not even her professors in the medical department. Her cheeks had puffed into soft, moon-like rounds. Her arms, once toned from years of tennis, now bore thick folds that jiggled with every breath. Her legs ached under her own body, and each step felt like walking with a mountain on her back. But worse than the physical pain was the silence of her peers, the way their eyes slid away, the whispers behind her as she waddled past in lecture halls. Even her roommate had stopped inviting her to parties, and when she could no longer fit in the classroom chairs, she left. Quietly. No fanfare. No goodbye. The email to the university was simple. Due to ongoing health complications, I will be taking a leave of absence, indefinitely. But what followed wasn't depression. It was fire. Elena refused to be forgotten. One night, snow pelted the windows as she sat bundled in her tiny studio, scrolling through volunteer opportunities in Alaska. One listing made her pause. Remote elder care assistant needed location. Sitka, Alaska live-in. Winter months. Must be compassionate. Medical experience preferred. Alaska. The end of the world. She could almost hear her parents screaming through the phone, but Elena wasn't looking for comfort. She was looking for a reason to believe she was still worth something. The wind in Sitka hit her like a wall the moment she stepped off the plane. Her heavy parka did little to shield her from the bite of -5°F winds. Her suitcase wheels jammed in the snow. But she didn't complain. She simply adjusted her knit cap over her golden hair and trudged on, face flushed, but determined. A tall man in a thick wool coat was waiting at the gate with a cardboard sign that read, Elena R. He was older, maybe in his early 50s, with streaks of gray in his dark beard and sharp cheekbones beneath tired eyes. His posture was stiff, like a man who'd learned to carry burdens alone. You must be Elena, he said, voice low but clear. I am, and you must be Dr. Adrian Hale, she replied, offering her hand. Her chubby fingers barely curled around his large gloved ones. He nodded. The truck's this way. It's about an hour to the house. Adrian's home wasn't just a house. It was a lodge-like wooden haven, nestled on the edge of a frozen lake, surrounded by endless pine trees blanketed in white. Inside, the warmth of a crackling fireplace contrasted sharply with the frost outside, and there, by the fireplace, sat a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, with dark curls and eyes too big for her small face. That's Lila, Adrian said simply. My daughter. The girl didn't speak. She only stared. Elena offered a small wave. Hi, Lila. I'm Elena. I'll be staying here for a while. Lila didn't wave back. She just blinked once, then ran upstairs, her small feet patting against the hardwood. She's shy, Adrian said, removing his coat. She lost her mother 2 winters ago. Cancer. I'm so sorry, Elena murmured. Something in her chest twisted, not just from his words, but from the way he didn't say them like a man who'd healed. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. We get a few elderly folks nearby who need check-ins. House calls mostly. I take care of the medical stuff. But with Lila and the long drives, I need someone like you. He looked her over quickly, eyes scanning her size, but without malice. Can you handle the terrain? I can try, Elena replied. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened slightly. Trying's enough up here. The days were quiet, but not easy. Elena learned how to move slowly on ice, how to help old folks dress their wounds, how to brew tea while her body ached from the weight. Lila continued to watch from corners like a silent owl, observing but never speaking. But one snowy morning, that changed. Elena was in the kitchen, struggling to reach the top shelf for a jar of cocoa. Her arms trembled, her belly pressed against the counter. Suddenly, a small hand reached up beside her. "I can get it," Lila whispered. Elena turned, stunned. "You talked." The little girl nodded. "You were gonna drop it." Elena laughed, a real, bubbling laugh she hadn't heard from herself in months. "Well, thank you, superhero." Lila smiled for the first time. It was like spring breaking through an endless winter. Later that evening, as they sipped cocoa by the fire, Lila climbed onto the couch beside Elena. "Are you sick?" she asked gently. Elena paused. "Kind of. My body doesn't work the way it's supposed to. It makes me gain weight no matter what I do." "But you're nice," Lila replied, setting her mug down. "You don't feel sick." Elena blinked, caught off guard by the pure innocence in those words. "Thanks, sweet girl. That means more than you know." From the far end of the room, Adrian watched. His eyes didn't just soften this time. They warmed. One night, as the wind howled outside and snowstorm warnings blinked on the old radio, Elena stood on the front porch, staring into the frozen dark. Her breath made soft clouds. Her body ached, her fingers were numb, but she didn't feel lost anymore. Adrian stepped beside her, offering a wool blanket. "You're not like anyone I've met before," he said quietly. "Because I'm big?" she asked with a hint of humor. "Number. Because you're still standing." They stood in silence, the snow gently falling between them. And for the first time in a long time, Elena didn't feel broken. She felt strong. For the first time in months, Elena felt like her reflection didn't mock her anymore. There were still mornings she woke up and hated her body, the way her thighs rubbed together painfully when she moved too fast, or how she struggled to tie her boots with trembling fingers. But Lila's gentle smile waiting at the kitchen table each morning, and Adrian's quiet acknowledgement of her strength, had become lifelines in the snow. Yet peace never lasts long in a place like Alaska. It began with a letter. A pale blue envelope arrived in the mail one crisp morning. Adrian sorted through the usual utility bills and newsletters before pausing at the unfamiliar handwriting. He frowned, walked into the living room, and handed it to Elena without a word. Her heart stuttered. The return address read, University of Washington Medical School. With trembling hands, she opened it. Ms. Elena R. Following your leave of absence, the committee has reviewed your progress. While your academic records remain commendable, your physical limitations raise concern regarding your clinical capabilities. We regret to inform you. She didn't read further. The words swam on the page as her breath quickened, her chest tightening. "I thought maybe they'd let me come back," she whispered. "Part-time, research assistant, anything." Adrian remained silent for a moment, his face unreadable. Then finally he spoke. "They don't deserve you." Elena looked up, startled. "What?" "You're more capable than half the interns I've seen in Seattle. They just don't see past what you carry." She bit her lip, blinking fast. "But maybe they're right. What if I never get better? What if this is just who I am now?" Adrian took a step forward, then paused. "Then we fight with who you are now, not who you used to be." But not everyone saw Elena the way Adrian and Lila did. In the small town nearby, where the general store doubled as a gossip mill, whispers had begun. A nurse from the local clinic had seen Elena helping an elderly man into a snow-covered truck. She'd made a joke, cruel, loud enough, about whether the suspension would survive. That night, Elena walked into the store for supplies. The room felt unusually quiet. She tried to ignore it, the sideways glances, the smirks. But when she reached for a box of tea on the top shelf, A voice from behind muttered just loud enough. Must be some kind of joke, we're letting her do elder care. Hope they got strong floorboards. She turned. It was Tom Weaver, one of Adrian's old colleagues, early 60s, bitter eyes. What did you say? She asked, voice low but steady. Tom shrugged. Nothing personal. But up here, we don't play with sympathy hires. This ain't Seattle. Something in her cracked. I'm not a hire. I'm a volunteer, and I've cared for more patients in a month than you have all year. He scoffed. Bet they can't even see past your shadow. The box dropped from her hand. The crash echoed through the store. Everyone froze. Elena didn't cry. She walked out into the snow without another word. That night, Adrian found her outside on the porch, hands buried deep in her coat, face flushed from the cold. He sat beside her, quiet for a long moment. I heard what happened, he finally said. I should leave, she whispered. I'm just a burden here. Adrian turned to face her. You think you're a burden to me, to Lila? She stayed silent. I lost my wife to ovarian cancer, he said slowly, voice gravelly. She weighed 98 pounds when she died. You think weight makes someone worthy of love or capable of saving a life? Elena's eyes met his. She wanted to believe him. I look at you, he continued, and I see someone who wakes up in pain, who moves through ice and wind with a heart 10 times stronger than most doctors I've met. And Lila, she talks now, because of you. Tears slid down her cheeks. You don't understand. I used to be different. I don't want the girl you used to be, he said softly. I want the woman who stood up to Tom Weaver with fire in her eyes. A breath caught in her throat. Then, the door creaked open. Lila peeked out, barefoot in fuzzy socks. Elena, she whispered. Don't be sad. You make the best cocoa in the world. Elena laughed through her tears. Thanks, sweetheart. Adrian stood. Come inside. It's warm, and there's stew. Elena hesitated, then followed. But as she entered, her ankle twisted awkwardly on the threshold. The pain was instant. She gasped, grabbing the wall. Mom! Lila cried instinctively. Time froze. Elena stared at her. What? Did you call me? Lila blinked, then flushed crimson. I meant Elena. I forgot. But Elena's lips trembled. Adrian was still. Then he said quietly, She's been drawing pictures. Of all 3 of us. I didn't know she started calling you that. Emotion surged through Elena's chest like a flood. Love, grief, disbelief. I'm not her mom, she whispered. I'm not even sure who I am anymore. Adrian stepped close, brushing a tear from her cheek. Then stay. We'll figure it out together. Outside, the storm thickened. The snow fell heavier than it had all year, and inside, for the first time, Elena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she belonged. But she had no idea that tomorrow would test every ounce of her strength. Because not all wounds stay buried in snow. The morning after the storm, the world was silent. Snow had buried the landscape in a deep white hush, smothering every sound beneath its weight. Elena woke early, instinctively sensing something was wrong. The house was too still. The fire had burned out. The air was sharp with cold. She reached for her robe, the thick fabric barely closing over her full body. Wincing as her sprained ankle throbbed, she shuffled into the hallway. Adrian, she called. No answer. She moved slowly into the living room. The front door was ajar, a soft draft spilling in. Her heart jumped. Then a voice from behind startled her. He left at dawn, Lila said, standing at the top of the stairs, hugging her stuffed polar bear. He said he had to check on Mr. Tobin. His heater went out. Elena's eyes widened. Mr. Tobin was 87. He lived 3 miles away, alone. and the storm had dumped over 4 feet of snow. She turned to Lila. "How long ago?" "Before sunrise," the little girl whispered. "He didn't take the truck. Said it was snowed in." Oh, God. He had walked. Elena moved quickly, or as quickly as her body would allow. She turned up the thermostat, made sure Lila was wrapped in blankets with enough snacks and a walkie-talkie. Then she layered on thermal leggings, her thickest coat, snow boots that barely fit over her swollen feet. The wind outside howled like something alive. She hesitated at the door, then looked back at Lila. "I'm going after him." Lila's eyes welled with fear. "But you're hurt. I have to. I can't let him freeze out there." The wind bit into her cheeks the moment she stepped outside. Her body felt 10 times heavier with every step through knee-deep snow. Her ankle burned with each movement, but adrenaline surged through her chest, stronger than pain. She followed the barely visible footprints Adrian had left behind, already being swallowed by fresh snow. "Please let me find him," she muttered. The trees loomed tall and still. Everything was white, blinding white, and eerily quiet. After 30 minutes, her lungs burned. Her legs trembled. She fell once, landing hard, her arm sinking into a snowbank. But she got up. Because for the first time in her life, someone had seen her not as a weight, but as a warrior, and she wasn't going to let him die. Finally, a shape in the distance. She stumbled forward, heart pounding. There, barely visible under a snow-covered pine, Adrian lay half-buried in snow, one arm shielding his face, his lips blue. "Adrian!" she cried, collapsing beside him. "Can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open. "Elena! What? You're freezing. We need to get you home." He tried to push himself up, but collapsed again, groaning. "Twisted something. Can't walk." She pulled off her scarf, wrapped it around his face, her fingers numb and shaking. "I'll carry you." His brows furrowed. "You can't." "I will." She looped his arm over her shoulder and with everything in her began to lift. Her body screamed, every joint, every muscle. But slowly, unbelievably, she rose, his weight sagging into hers, 1 step, 2. The cold tore at her throat, and tears froze on her lashes, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The journey back felt endless. She rested every 50 steps, whispering to Adrian, "Stay with me. Don't fall asleep." "I didn't know you were this strong," he murmured through cracked lips. "Neither did I," she choked out. When the house finally came into view, Elena nearly collapsed. The porch lights glowed faintly through the snowflakes. She screamed with every ounce of her left strength, "Lila, open the door!" The front door burst open. Lila ran out, tears in her eyes. "Oh my God! Dad! Get blankets!" Elena cried, lowering Adrian carefully onto the rug inside. She helped strip off his wet coat, boots, and began checking for frostbite, her training kicking in despite the chaos. Adrian looked at her through weak eyes. "You saved my life. I wasn't going to lose you too," she whispered. He reached for her hand, and though hers was trembling, she held on like she'd never let go. That night, after Adrian was stabilized and asleep under mounds of quilts, Elena sat by the fire with Lila, wrapped in one thick blanket together. "You saved him," Lila whispered. "I had to," Elena said softly. "You love him, so do I." Lila hesitated, then leaned her head against Elena's shoulder. "I don't want you to ever leave." Elena's throat closed. She brushed Lila's hair back. "I'm not going anywhere." Hours later, as snow continued falling outside, Adrian stirred. Elena rose from the couch, limping over. "You should rest," she said gently. He took her hand again, this time holding it longer. "I've spent so long building walls," he said hoarsely. "After my wife died, I thought I'd buried my heart with her. But then you came, and I watched Lila laugh again. I watched myself breathe again. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. "I never thought I could be loved like this," she whispered. "Not in this body, not after everything." He reached up, touching her face. "You're more than your body. You are courage, fire, and I love you." She let out a broken breath, one that carried every wound, every rejection, every cruel word she'd ever endured, and let it fall away in the warmth of his hands. "I love you too," she whispered. Then she leaned down, and in the stillness of that snowbound cabin, their lips met. Slow, tender, real. Outside, the storm finally broke, and inside, so did their fears. The snow melted slowly in the weeks that followed. Spring in Alaska was quiet, not a burst of green, but a gentle thaw. Ice cracked like old bones along the lake. Sunlight returned, slowly stretching longer across the mountains, and inside the cabin, something else had softened too. Elena. Not just her body, which had dropped nearly 20 pounds from the relentless walking, the caretaking, the strength she never knew she had, but her spirit. She laughed more now, not the shy, uncertain laugh from before, but one full of warmth, the kind that made Lila giggle uncontrollably at the breakfast table, her milk almost spilling every time Elena did her silly impressions of town folks. Adrian watched them from across the room one morning, coffee in hand, leaning on the doorframe like a man who still couldn't believe his luck. "You two," he murmured, smiling. "You've ruined my peace." Elena turned with a smirk. "You call this chaos?" Lila threw a pancake at him. "Daddy, she makes breakfast fun." He laughed, a real, full laugh that Elena had never heard from him before. His eyes crinkled, warm and unguarded. She walked over and slipped her hand into his. It still felt new, still felt like something she was learning how to hold. But it felt right. One quiet afternoon, Elena stood alone in front of the bathroom mirror. Same face, same blue eyes, same long golden hair brushed smooth behind her ears. But now, she saw something different. She saw herself. Not the weight, not the shame, not the disease that had stolen her plans and rewrote her story. She saw a woman who had walked into a blizzard for love, who had made cocoa for a grieving child, who had stood her ground in a world that often mocked softness and sighs. Her hand brushed her rounded belly, the thick curves of her hips, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She whispered softly, "You're still worth everything." Later that week, a letter arrived. Another envelope, same handwriting, from the university. Adrian was at the clinic. Lila was building a snow fort in the backyard. Elena stared at the envelope in her lap for a long time before opening it. "Dear Ms. Elena R., after reconsideration by the faculty board, and in light of your recent volunteer experience in Alaska, we are pleased to offer you re-entry into the academic program as a part-time student. Additionally, we welcome your application for a research assistantship in community elder care. Please confirm by May 1st. Her fingers trembled. She could go back. But did she want to? That night she sat with Adrian on the porch, wrapped in a blanket as stars blinked through the dark. He held the letter in one hand, the other wrapped around her waist. "So?" he asked quietly. Elena stared at the stars. "Part of me wants to go, to finish what I started, prove to myself that I can." He nodded. "And the other part?" She looked at him, then toward the soft hum of Lila's bedtime music through the window. "The other part wants to build something new. Here, with you." He didn't say anything right away, just looked at her the way he always did, like she wasn't broken, or brave, or beautiful, but whole. Then he said, "There's no wrong choice, Elena. You've already proven everything that matters." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Maybe I'll apply for the assistantship remotely. Stay connected, but stay here too. He smiled. That sounds like you. 1 week later, a package arrived for Lila. Inside was a hand-sewn apron covered in cartoon wolves and hearts, and a card that read, "To the bravest little girl in Alaska, keep drawing, keep dreaming. Love, your almost mom, Elena." Lila wore it every morning. Months passed. The snow melted for good. Green things grew. The town no longer whispered. They waved. The nurse who once mocked Elena asked for her help organizing care visits for the elderly. People changed. Elena changed. And one golden evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and turned the lake to fire, Adrian knelt down on the porch. He didn't say much, just held up a simple silver ring and whispered, "Come home for good." She didn't cry. She smiled, wide, unapologetic, radiant. Then she pulled him into her arms and said, "I already am." Elena's story reminds us that sometimes life takes everything we thought defined us, our plans, our bodies, our dreams, and turns them inside out. But within that breaking, there is space for something new to grow. She didn't find healing in a hospital or validation from a diploma. She found it in a snow-covered cabin, in the laughter of a child, in the quiet gaze of a man who saw her heart before her weight. The lesson is clear. You are not your reflection, your past, or your limitations. You are your resilience, your capacity to love, your willingness to rise even when the world tells you to sit down. If you've ever felt invisible, unwanted, or like you're too much, or not enough, remember, Elena. And remember, the right people will see your soul first. Thank you so much for watching this video. If Elena's journey touched your heart, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with someone who needs hope tonight. From all of us here on the channel, stay kind, stay brave, and we'll see you in the next story.